Hi everyone, thank you so much for stopping by the Rainy Day Crochet channel. In this video, I'm going to be teaching crochet for the absolute beginner. So we're going to be going everything you'll need to know to get started on your crochet journey. So in this video today, we're going to be talking about quite a few different topics. So we'll be going over what supplies you're going to need, how to hold your hook in your yarn, how to create a slip knot, how to chain, how to single crochet, how to turn your work, and how to finish off and weave in your ends. So let's talk about what supplies you're going to need to get started with crochet. So of course you're going to need some yarn, but what yarn should you get as a beginner? So what I have here is a chunky yarn, and this is what I would really recommend for a beginner. It's a lot thicker than a lot of other yarns you might find out there, so it makes it a lot easier to see your work and to work with. This is also an acrylic yarn, and I am a really big fan of acrylic yarns, especially for beginners. They're really easy to work with, and they have a texture that just feels really nice. So I would definitely recommend that. You'll probably see some of the most common sizes that I see the most in crochet are double knit, worsted, and chunky. And chunky is the bigger of the three, but any of those three sizes would work really well. So depending on what you get, you'll want to look at the back label. It's going to show you what size of hook to get depending on what size of yarn. So in this case, it says that we should use a 6mm size 10. So that's what I have here. I have a 6mm. And so this hook that I have here is a clover. These are what I prefer to use, but you'll find hooks in a lot of different materials and shapes. So I would say try what looks good to you and just find what's most comfortable to you. I've tried a lot of different types, and this is just what feels really good to me. You'll also want a pair of scissors. So I have these little scissors here, and I really like to have a smaller pair like this because it's a lot easier to get in nice and close to your work when you're trimming off, so it's a nice clean cut. You could also get a stitch marker. So this is one that I bought, but I've also seen people use bobby pins, which work really well. So if you happen to have any bobby pins sitting around, you can just use those. And I'll show you later how to actually use this in your work. And then you'll want a darning or tapestry needle. And this is what we're going to use at the end when we're weaving in and tying off our work. So now that we have all of our supplies, I'm going to show you how to hold your hook and your yarn. So when it comes to holding your hook, there's two really popular ways that I've come across when I've been learning how to crochet. So the first way is called the knife hold, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's how you would hold a dinner knife. So basically you just put your thumb on the bottom of the hook handle, as you can see here, and you'll put the rest of your fingers on the top, and you'll just work with it like that. The other way is the pencil hold, which is just like how you would hold a pencil. So as you can see here, I'm kind of pinching the top of the handle with my thumb and my index finger, and then resting it on the top of my middle finger, and you just work with it like that. So the way that I learned how to crochet was with a knife hold. So that's how you'll see me do it in this video. But as a beginner, just play around with the different ways, or maybe you'll find your own way. So just have fun playing with it, and you know, look around at YouTube videos, see what other people do, and just find what works for you. So now that we know how to hold our crochet hook, let's go over how to hold our yarn. So go ahead and take the label off of your yarn and find the loose end, and then unravel a pretty decent amount. And the reason you want to do that is when you're working with your yarn, you don't want it to be tugging on the ball of yarn, because that'll mess up your tension. So you kind of want your yarn to be a little bit loose. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the tail end here and kind of lay it down this way and leave about this much length. You can see here. And then we're going to wrap the yarn over the ring finger like so. And then we're going to take this end and wrap it over the index finger. So just like that. This is what it looks like underneath and on top. So one more time. Just going to wrap it over the ring finger and pull it over the index finger. And there you go. So this is just one way to hold your yarn. There's quite a few different ways, so I would look around and see what other people do as well and just play around with it and just find out what works for you and what feels the most natural. Now that we know how to hold our hook and our yarn, let's go ahead and learn how to create a slip knot. So a slip knot is important for crochet because it is how you are going to start, I would say, all of your projects, just about all of your projects in crochet. It's what allows you to begin working your chain stitches, which we're going to learn next. And your chain stitches are where you begin your actual single crochet stitches from. So to create your slip knot, what you're going to do is you're going to take your index and middle finger, and we're going to leave, I would say, about this much yarn at the end. You want to leave this much because when we're at the end of our project, you're going to need to be able to sew this yarn in. So you want to make sure you have enough to be able to do that. So we'll take our index and our middle finger and wrap the yarn around like so, and then we'll bring it back behind that loop we created. And we're going to take our crochet hook, insert it under this first loop, take the hook and pull, right? And then we're going to pull this back loop and we're kind of flipping the crochet hook. So we're pulling that back loop through the first, and then we're just going to pull down both of our tail ends. And that's our slip knot. So let's go over that one more time. So leaving a bit of a tail, I'm going to wrap the yarn around both of our fingers. Wrap it again, bringing it behind that first loop. Taking our hook, go underneath that first loop, and then drag and flip. And then we can remove our fingers and just tighten both by pulling on both of those ends. And there you go. You have your slip knot. So now that we have our slip knot in place, let's go ahead and learn how to chain. So chaining in crochet is really important because it's what you do to start creating most of your projects. Once you have your chain in place, it's what you begin working your crochet stitches into. So you can really think of it as your foundation, and it's often frequently referred to as your foundation row. So let's go ahead and get started. One term you're going to want to familiarize yourself with is the yarn over, and I'll show you that in just a moment. But yarn over is really important to know because it's used and referenced so many times in crochet. So be sure to get comfortable with the concept. So we're going to use that in our chain stitches here. So to get started, I like to make sure that the tail end is kind of facing down this way. and then my working yarn is up here. And what I like to do is kind of grip them like this. So you can kind of see that here. Separate them. This just stabilizes everything and kind of, it makes sure that I don't accidentally use the tail and I know where my working yarn is. So first thing we're going to do is yarn over. So a yarn over is when you put your hook. So we're going to bring the working yarn this way and you're going to put your hook behind the yarn. So you're just wrapping around like that. So that's your yarn over. So now that we've yarned over, we're going to want to pull this yarn through our loop that we have. So this is when the hook begins to do the work. So let's go ahead and pull through. So there we have our very first chain stitch. And we're going to go ahead and do 11 of them. So things to keep in mind, as you can see, as I work up, I'm going to continue to readjust my grip. So now I'm actually grabbing that chain I just created, because I like to keep the grip near where I'm working because it just really keeps everything nice and stable. So go ahead and pull through for the second one. And you also want to be mindful of your tension, right? So we don't want our stitches to get too tight, because if they do, it's going to make it really hard to work our actual crochet stitches into them. So just kind of try to keep things relaxed. Keep gripping near your stitch to keep it stable and just pull through. And that's just something, you know, it might take time. You just have to keep practicing it, but it'll come. Let's see how many we have here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So just do one more. So there's 11. So your chain row should look something a little bit like this. So now that we have our chain row in place, let's begin to learn how to do single crochet. So with single crochet, when you first start into your foundation row here, we're going to want to skip the first chain. And so what that's going to look like, so we're going to want to find this first chain here. So I'll use my needle here to kind of point it out. So here you can see we have a loop on our hook, and that does not count as a chain. So our first chain is going to be this right here, sitting next to our hook. You can almost see like there's kind of a V shape to each of our loops, so that can kind of help you see where we're at here. So that's the first one. You're going to want to go into the second one, and there's a bit going on here. So what we're going to want to do is make sure that we're just going underneath this top part here. You can kind of see that loop, kind of this side of the V, so to speak. We're going to want to insert our hook right there. So let's go ahead and do that. So insert our hook. I'm going to do a yarn over like we did with our chains. Just bring that right on over and pull our hook through. So now we have 2 loops on our hook. I'm going to want to yarn over again and pull through both of those loops like that. And that's your first single crochet. So we're going to be doing a total of 10 of them. So we're going to want to find the next chain, and this, when you're starting out, it can be a little hard to know what you're looking at, so I'm going to try to point it out. So here we have our single crochet that we just created. This right here is the chain we just worked in, so you can see the single crochet sitting in there. And then we've got our next chain. So again, kind of looking for that V. Those can be helpful. So we'll just do the same thing. We're going to insert the hook into that chain. So again, let's yarn over, pull through for 2 loops on the hook, yarn over again, and pull through. Now we have 2, and we're going to continue in the same way to the end. So I'll just keep going in the same fashion. And then when we get to the end, again, I'll point out what we're looking at. I know as a beginner myself, when I got to the end of the row, it would get a little bit confusing to figure out like what exactly is the end of the row. So I want to make sure that that's really clear when we get there. Okay, so that was number 8. Here's number 9. And then number 10. Okay, so this is what your last chain is going to look like. You can see that there. You can see our little slip knot that we made earlier right here. So we're not going to actually do anything with that. That's just there. You can ignore it. We're just going to go into this last chain. And there you go. That's what your first row of single crochet should look like. So before we move on, I just want to talk really quickly about kind of what's going on with this first row here. So one thing you might be wondering about is we started with 11 chains, but we only have 10 single crochets. And that's because we had to skip that first chain. So the thing to understand about single crochet is that to kind of, so you can think of the chain row as like your first row. Technically it's not, but you can think of it as a row. And to kind of move ourselves up to this next row where we actually created the single crochets, we need a single chain to be able to do that. So that's kind of why that got, why we got reduced down to 10 single crochets, because we were using that one just to kind of turn and do our work. So it'll make a little more sense when we do this second row. So let's go ahead and learn how to turn our work. So to turn your work, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to chain 1. So we're going to want to yarn over and pull through so we have a single chain. So before we actually turn, something to know about crochet is that we always work from right to left. So that's what we just did here with this first row. And if we didn't chain 1 and turn, we'd be, it'd be going from left to right, but you can't do that. So that's why we have to do the chain 1. The chain 1, kind of like I was saying earlier, it kind of bumps you up to the next row. So we need to keep using those chains to keep doing that. So with single crochet, we do 1. I'm going to be making a couple of videos for double and treble crochet, and they have different amounts of chains to do. So just keep that in mind. It's not always going to be 1. It depends on the type of stitch that you're doing. So with that said, we've done our chain 1. It's bumping us up to the next row, and now we can actually turn our work and look at it the other side. So what we're going to do here to start our second row is let's make sure we know where we are. So this here is the chain 1 that we did. We don't want to stitch into there. We want to stitch into the first single crochet. So go ahead and stick the needle underneath it where we're going to be inserting our hook. So you can see there's like a V shape there, and you can see that at the top of all these single crochets. So that makes it really easy to know where your stitches are. So just looking for those V's throughout will be really helpful. So this is our first V, our first single crochet. So let's go ahead and stitch into there. So go ahead and insert our hook, yarn over and pull through, yarn over again and pull through 2 loops. So this will be just like the previous row, except that we had that chain 1 at the beginning, and now we are single crocheting into other single crochets. So go ahead and keep doing this to the end of the row, and then again, once we get to the end, I will show you what we're looking for, just so you aren't confused about what it looks like at the end, and you know like exactly where the row is ending. Okay, so as you can see here, we have 2 stitches left, 1 and 2. So go ahead and stitch into that one. And then we just have the last one left. So a couple of things you can look for to kind of help you know you're at the end. As you can see here, it looks really uneven. So that can help. And then again, looking for those V's. So you can see we got our last V there. Go ahead and do that. And there you go. It looks all nice and even. And that is how you single crochet. One thing that I didn't mention was how we can actually incorporate our stitch marker. So when it comes to like single crochet rows, you know, I don't tend to use a stitch marker as much. I just count in my head. But if you're doing like really long rows, it could be very helpful to make sure that you're on the right track. So all you have to do, let's say we want to mark this last stitch. In this case, we just open this one up and slide it into the loops, kind of like we did when we crocheted into them, and then just put that on. And you can actually crochet right over that. So I'll go ahead and start the next row. So you want to leave that there. You can just kind of crochet around it, and it's not going to hurt anything. You'll still be able to pull it right out. So I'll just crochet like a few stitches here, and then I'll show you that it's really easy to just pull it right out. Just like that. All right, so now that we have a few rows done here, I went ahead and completed that third row. I'm going to show you how to finish your work off. So go ahead and grab your scissors and your needle. So we're going to go ahead and cut off our yarn from the ball of yarn. So what I like to do here is leave about, I'd say this much yarn. So I'll go ahead and trim that. And then with your hook, you're just going to pull that through. So here we have 2 ends that we're going to want to sew in. Go ahead and weave that into our needle, like so. So what I like to do here is I'm going to bring the yarn down here to this row, and then I like to stitch behind each of the single crochets. So basically I'm putting my needle in the middle of all those stitches. So if you look at the other side, you can see it's in the middle of it all. And then just kind of pull it through like that. I go probably a couple of inches, like 2 or 3 inches, and kind of loosen it up, because when you're pulling through with this, it can cause your work to bunch up a little bit. So make sure you pull it a little bit. And then I like to go back the other way, because that really helps to make sure that your work's nice and secure. And when I do that, I tend to split in the middle of a stitch, because that just makes it really secure. So it'll be something like that. And then I just pull back through the other way to the end. And again, just kind of pull on it, make sure everything looks good, nothing's puckering up. And then we'll go ahead and trim that end off. And go ahead and do the same for the other end. So now that we're done with this, what's next? So I would say go ahead and keep practicing your slip knots, your chains, your single crochet. You can make a bigger project than this one. All you would have to do is chain like 20 or 30, and then you can make it into a big square, and that would actually give you something that's kind of like a washcloth. So that's really great practice when you're new. And once you're feeling comfortable with your single crochet, I'd say it's time to move on to the other basic crochet stitches, the double and treble crochet. So I'll be making a couple of videos on those as well. So check those out when you feel ready. And that's all I have for this video. So thank you so much for checking this video out. I really hope it helped you out. If you have any questions, please let me know. If you liked this video, then please like it and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much.